Alright, hey guys. So today I'm going to try to go through how I think Myth and Storm should be played at Legendary. Albeit I don't have a Legend Storm or Legend Myth that I've queued in the current meta. However, I actually did kind of help my friend build a Myth a few months back. And I really don't think Storm is, very complicated. So essentially, guess I'll start with Storm because I just like wrote it down here in the chat first. But yeah, so pretty much, I guess obviously you guys know, or maybe you don't, like Insane Bolt got nerfed years and years ago, and it's not really obviously like a viable spell in PvP. So Storm really now is kind of similar to it's always been, but maybe they actually have less RNG to rely on. Is basically you have to kill your opponent before they kill you, and I guess you still have like a damage advantage and everything, but like at least in how legendary PvP is played now, I personally put Storm at the bottom of my ranking. Um, Although if anything, it's more like I don't really know how to call it, but it was kind of from my point of view, how the ranking was essentially how easy it is to win with the schools, which like by extension means like how many mistakes can you afford to make and still win a match? Where I personally find on an ice, sorry, not even really on an ice, although ice is like the only one of the only other schools that falls under this. But on a death, you literally don't have to play that well, and you can still get away with the win. And at the end of the day, that's mostly because of the drain, and partly because like you have good like HP and everything, and then you still have like a super cracked 4-pip spell like Headless Horseman, where it can deal like a ludicrous amount of damage, and then stuff like Monster Mash, right? But getting off track a bit, for Storm, I guess the problem is you just don't really have like I guess your resist isn't super high. Obviously your HP suffers a lot. Like you kind of almost have to run like an HP specific build to even have like pseudo competitive HP on a Legend Storm. It's really hard. HP makes a huge difference because it's not like max. It's still a chip game, but the chip game is much quicker. Like you just don't have much leeway. Like you have to start hitting unless you're playing on ice essentially, in which case you can just kind of stall and be bad. And I even like lives that kind of jade improperly lose because like again you can't even be that tanky because as I mentioned in previous videos I think essentially like an open like a strong combo on any school like obviously it's not a one shot but it's the equivalent like if your defenses aren't good the other guy has pips and he cracks you twice like it's pretty much GG most of the time unless you're warded or like you're fighting a fire and you're on an ice with like the Zafarian gear for example. But yeah, like a storm is obviously well you can run a couple different kind of same for most schools really, but you can choose up to you if you want waterworks or house of scales for your hat and robe. I think basically for every single school, you have a tiny offensive surplus with house of scales in general, um, whereas like a little more well-rounded or a little better uh, like more balanced and more resistance focused stats with Waterworks. I don't know about this, but yeah. The one thing though on the for the Waterworks gear for the schools that gives like accuracy instead of pip chance. I think House of Skills does give like a little bit of pip chance. So like I guess all the House of Skills gear gives like balanced stats overall. They're just like I feel like it's objectively worse gear than Waterworks for a lot of schools, but that may be the tankier, more defensive schools. Ice being an exception because of the accuracy pip thing. So yeah, and then boots, obviously. I mean, if you're a storm and you're going for damage, obviously probably Professor's Horde, unless you have some obscure setup. There's also, I don't know, I don't think I have anyone added on my list that would have this hat right now, but I believe it's a maybe a Wisteria pack hat. If it's not boots, I believe it's a hat that gives electric elf cards or whatever. Like yeah, like the the weird Burning Rampage style elf, I believe. A couple cards of that. You can also run the amulet that gives, I believe it's an amulet. It might be, might be just tripping. That gives you an extra Storm Elf card, as well as the pet. Like I mentioned, the Electric Elf is, I think it's pretty common and pretty good um, on Storm at this level band, where basically you're gonna. It's kind of similar to Fire, but you're gonna try to Electric Elf their shields off or Wand hit them. And I'm not sure, Catch of the Day isn't used that often, but obviously Catch of the Day is good if your opponent blades up. Otherwise, Triton is very, very strong. There's probably a spell that I'm missing off the top of my head. You do Wild Bolt, like people still Wild Bolt at this level band, but basically, I mean, it's happened to me. Well, it didn't even matter, but there's storms that have just completely swept, and like the only hit they got off is one Wild Bolt, got a low roll, but even if they got a high roll, it wouldn't have mattered, and they only got one hit off, and that was that. But oh, there's a treasure card that I don't know. Obviously, I wouldn't have it on this character in my balance, but it's Ani no Plague or Ani no War. I'm not sure which of the two, but I think it does 1,000 damage, flat damage for 6 pips, which is used. I believe it's slightly stronger than regular Triton and probably slightly stronger than regular Enchanted Triton, although I'm not 100% on that. I do know. I think it's more. It's like as a higher, at least, yeah, higher damage than Triton TC, I believe, is what it is. The Royal Triton nerf hurt Storm, basically, well, on most levels, I believe. I'm trying to think off the top of my, I mean, leave it, like, really common spells, but I think it's pretty intuitive. Like, you may or may not carry, not sure if Lightning Bat because of Wild Bolt, but maybe Storm Shark, maybe Kraken, and maybe a Stormzilla, assuming your pips are not necessarily going to be amazing if you want decent accuracy and good stats overall. But we can go check the trainer if we want. Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers the gear and the setup. Like I said, I don't think Storm is very reliable at this level band. I think I don't know if they're legit, really. There are Storms that are quote-unquote warlords, but I think those are just players that have general PvP knowledge, and you just kind of, like, if you hit fast enough and your opponent, like, doesn't know what they're doing / doesn't know how to play Storm, I think you can win, you know, like, with relative consistency. But again, I think I think a good player against a good player, I think Storm's at a disadvantage at this level band. Alright, moving on to Myth. So, yeah, well, I already covered Storm, doesn't matter. But, I think a spell you should definitely use on a Myth if you can, or if you have it, or it's pretty much busted, is just the straight up Ninja Pig spell. Just looking to see if I forgot anything, but I don't think you have time to get away with like a hidden bubble, hidden shield, really. I mean, that'd be really obscure. I feel like I've seen it used, but it's like back against Isis to try to counter the Zafarian gear. I feel like people have run Ice Ward or Ice Resistance on Storm, but again, like defensive Storm is real shady. But back to Myth. Just like at Max, it's really common, especially with the Shambos now, to trap stack on Myth. So I guess I don't know, like, it's really, I mean, I dislike playing Myth because, like, the trap stack, like, one-shot is an option, and I think it's the most common strategy, although I do find it rare to queue Myth, at least a few months back. They're pretty rare. Like, there's literally, like, a couple of them in queue. And I'm not even sure if the ones I'm thinking of were legit, you know, like they're whatever. The ranks doesn't really matter, but it's hard to rank up on a Myth. And a lot of Myths, like literally, like I'm like, you guys will disagree or whatever, but literally, like if you're completely legit and you're not like ultra teched out / just like your 5th character or whatever, or if you don't use super cheesy strats, a lot of Myths and like maybe a couple metas ago were literally hard stuck at like Sergeant. So yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, there's a lot of schools like, yeah, there's a lot of schools like, you know, like Fire, like Knight Captain, because like, I don't know, a lot of, like literally so many players doored or like soft boosted, or they just have leftover rank from crit exploiting that it's, I don't know, like you really can't go off rank, and I think that's why like the data is kind of messed up for like KI tries to see like if the game is actually balanced or not, which I know they don't really make adjustments for mid levels because of the popularity of Max and percentages. But yeah, for Myth, basically Ninja Pigs. Orthrus is a strong 7 pip with Surge, does 1,000 damage. Obviously gets rid of a minion because it's an AoE. I've talked about Minotaur in the past. I feel like Minotaur is actually, it's not, maybe not overrated, but like should maybe only be used as a finisher, like to get around a shield. Um, yeah, because I don't find the damage is that high, and at least definitely not in comparison to Ninja Pigs, which is a great spell. I'm not sure, but I think off the top of my head it's like a 640 base or something like that. So with Surge, 940 pips on a Myth for 5 pips. Yeah, so that's obviously great value. Deals a truckload of damage, and like I mentioned, the what's it called? Let's go see it. The Rochambeau obviously converts basically any. Oh, you go check it out, but basically you get traps on your opponent. So let's see exactly so I don't lie. Okay, so I think this is clear 3 debuffs on yourself. And this one is, oh, there, okay, no, it's here, sorry. And the other one is, yeah, clear 3 shields on the opponent, convert them to traps. And I've seen as well, I guess you can even carry it in TC, but just shatter. Sorry, something in my throat. Shatter, appear, steal ward, get around shields. I've seen a few Medusa, sorry, not even Medusa actually, Basilisk strats. So I guess like maybe almost like Blade Stack or try to buff stack attempt Basilisk, try to stun chain. Um, yeah, you know, Myth is pretty rare in queue, and I mean, to be full, like my win loss against the schools that are lower in my ranking is like way higher. Like essentially, it would be an anomaly for me to queue a Myth, a Fire, or a Storm and lose. Even a Life in general, for whatever reason, I feel on any school really, I just, although Life is annoying to face, um, yeah, for whatever reason, you know, they're annoying matches. You know, it's not fun to play against. But I don't personally find Life is like a super struggle or anything like that. And if anything, because they kind of rely on some stolly defensive stuff pretty often, actually, um, I find they might misplay, or, you know, play suboptimally, like play a little lazily, or they play too fast because of timer, and then they end up like when the momentum is enough momentum in my favor to combo kill them, and it doesn't matter how many times they can press Satyr. It's GG. But yeah, back to Myth. So I think that's pretty much in terms of the deck setup. Probably like I just don't like Myth. I just don't like Myth at its level band. I think the most effective way to play Myth is with the cheesy strategy, like a short deck kind of trap stack kind of thing. Yeah, Medusa isn't really used much, or at least not effectively. Most people stun block if they know what they're doing. Just playing, sorry, I would say this is kind of opposite, but playing against the Myth, even playing against the Storm. One thing I didn't mention, Stormlord, which is used somewhat. Like discard against schools that can stun, especially if they're playing offensively. Although it's kind of a 50-50 depending on like whether you should just take the L and get stunned. Like you should think about discarding fast to find your first stun block, because it may cost you the game, like, or win you the game in certain situations, like basically like messing your opponent up or his momentum or his plan by setting up a stun block. Right, so I think offensively, yeah, that's pretty much like all I can really think of off the top of my head. I don't know if we can go somewhere interesting. I don't really know, but yeah. What else in terms of the gear? So same as like most other schools. I mentioned my thing like Myth is pretty interesting stats, like pretty balanced stats. However, because they do suffer in HP, I feel like they suffer more than some other schools. You know, it's not like the Myth stats look good, and then you see the HP, and then you get in a match, and then you lose because you don't have the HP, and it's blow for blow. And then if you play for a death, it doesn't even matter. Especially death will naturally have set shields against you. Learn, because Myth, like, you know, 70% shields against Myth aren't necessarily super common. And then, you know, the Myth thinks he's clever. He's probably not gonna have, like, you know, setting up I feel like the Bazzi is just like a losing play often, but otherwise, try to, you know, send out the Minotaur, and then the second hit does like 1400, and it's like, yeah, good job. I have like, you know, more than 4000 HP. Doesn't matter that much, and then out momentum them, you know, and you win. So yeah, for gear, you know, I think their Waterworks gear, at least, you know, like robe and hat is solid for Myth, I believe. Trixie gear does, I believe the robe gives high resist, or tied for the most. I may be wrong. Gives 12 or 13 even percent, I believe. What else? Yeah, boots. I mean, it's always the same, right? You can either wear Cyrus. I've seen Glendemmings, however, you'll have even lower. Although you do get higher resist, you have even lower HP if you rock Glendemmings, and obviously you need to be a warlord, assuming it's a new character. Um, what else? Robe. I mean, sorry, wand. You can rock the Aquilin wand. Yeah, because I haven't really seen anyone on the myth run like the Rude Goblin for the 3% resist from the Road Warriors. Is there another one used on maybe like I don't know if Warlord, because Myth is just rare, man. It's just not that good and rare. And the myths that are Warlord, at least I would say, like the ones that if there are any that are legit, I feel like it's like a non-significant percentage of them. So I would say probably a Quillen Wand. Can you minion? Maybe. Like obviously they use the 0-pip puppet, but usually I just leave it up and I kill them before. Like I just the moment they're like not trap stacking, it's kind of goes downhill for them. I've seen Talos used, but again, like most schools that have like a 4-pip, if you have decent, like a normal damage stat or a high damage stat, I feel like a, you know, like a 4-pip, like a 4-pip, unenchanted with a crit just kills the Talos, which is like an L for you if you cast it. And then, I believe that's a dungeon. And then in terms of, yeah, well, yeah, obviously you make them waste an enchantment, but like often a 4-pip can kill Talos, so then it's like up to you whether or not you want to cast it. But I don't really think you have the pips or the time to do that, so I might not even do that unless you're playing maybe like an ice possibly. But even then, like couple, because you have trouble healing, right? Like what are you gonna do? Like run life mastery or something? Um, I feel like I saw at least one death mastery myth when Sack was out, and then you know get the Talos up and I guess tower shield a lot and stuff. But now tower's a little nerfed. So yeah, I don't think it's looking good for myth unless you play cheese. So yeah, the gear, I guess, yeah, at that point I guess you run double duelist, like nothing complicated. Um, could you run House of Scales, robe or hat, and like lose a bit of your defensive stats? I don't even know if you can afford that. So that's pretty much, I think, how, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Pretty much all she wrote in terms of myth. I think Storm, I covered most of it. That quick mention about the Storm Lord potential for a combo. Get that 1-turn stun, and then maybe you can even probably hit through a tower and then try to finish with a Triton. But depending on what school you're playing, unless you're playing a fire or something, I feel like most of the time you won't even get the kill. Yeah, like I feel like the odds are not in your favor when you're playing on a Storm. So, yeah, you know, I think that's pretty much what I have to say. Obviously, now it's like I've covered all 7 of the schools. These two, since I don't personally queue on either one of those schools at Legend right now, and I didn't have the char to pull up the actual, like, you know, the deck and the spells and everything, I didn't want to, you know, speak out of turn or have this be extremely boring. But, you know, well, you know, this video turned out long, actually. I guess because I'm mostly talking about, like, anecdotal, not even, no, that's not even true. But yeah, you know, I feel like I've said some things, hopefully, and yeah, hopefully covered it. I don't know if yeah, you know, it's always like this, man. It's half common sense, depending on what your experience is. Half is okay, maybe it gives me an idea, and maybe if you're thinking of choosing a school to make a character and you want to try Legend PvP, currently I wouldn't personally recommend Myth or Storm, but if you just want to have fun, I mean, obviously go ahead. But I just personally think Myth is cheesy, and I think Storm, well, in a way, Storm is also cheesy because you essentially need positive RNG to win. So it's like, is it even skill based? I don't know. Let me know, I guess. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the boring end of this video, please like and subscribe if you'd like to keep mid-level PvP alive. And have an amazing day. Take care.